This is Letter from America. Today's topic is Mnangagwa's disgusting act of desperation for votes as ZANU PF campaign propaganda fizzles out. One of the most disgusting and reprehensible acts by ZANU PF leader Mnangagwa was captured live and went viral on the internet. At a recent rally, Mnangagwa had the women line up and bow to him as if he was a paramount chief or king. When they did so, he rewarded them with money. His aides went on to hand money to the women who were bowing to Mnangagwa and his wife. It was undoubtedly a sign of desperation that Mnangagwa is likely to lose this year's general election. And Mnangagwa knows it. That is why he is so desperate. Mnangagwa himself knows that his leadership of Zimbabwe since the coup against Mugabe in 2017 has been a monumental failure, a monumental disaster. Under Mnangagwa's leadership, nearly 50% of the Zimbabweans now live in extreme poverty. Not just poverty, but extreme poverty. And this figure has doubled since 2017, only 5 years ago. This act showed that Mnangagwa is not electable for the position of the president of the country. This has been known for many years, that Mnangagwa lacks the presidential character to be leader of a nation. 23 years ago, in Kwekwe, and at a time when Mnangagwa was seen as the political godfather of the Midlands region, as well as an untouchable and ruthless heavyweight, the then little-known Blessing Chibondu humiliated this ZANU PF much vaunted crocodile, as he was called, in the race for the Kwekwe Central National Assembly seat in 2000, according to an online publication on Zimbabwe. Mnangagwa's politics of desperation comes at a time ZANU PF campaign propaganda has bogged down, is fizzling out. ZANU PF has nothing to show Zimbabweans what they have achieved for the nation since independence 42 years ago. Both rural and urban Zimbabweans, who have collectively been reduced to extreme poverty, have known for a long time that Mnangagwa and ZANU PF are incapable of governing the country. They have messed up the country. What is even more spectacularly evident is ZANU PF knows they have failed to rule Zimbabwe. This is why they are resorting to violence and other disgusting acts. Back in 2005, Chebundu again beat Mnangagwa in the 2005 general elections. That led Mnangagwa to abandon any hope of ever winning the constituency in the Midlands. It was, however, disappointing that Chebundu ended up joining Mnangagwa's ZANU PF last year. Wounded and with his pride having taken a battering, Mnangagwa disappeared from Kwekwe Central and resurfaced in Chirumba Zimbabwe, constituency where he became an MP after the 2008 harmonized elections. And it's anybody's guess how he became an MP. In a very rare but overdue admission, ZANU PF spokesperson Chris Mutsvangwa, said the newly formed Citizens Coalition for Change, or CCC, was now infiltrating ZANU PF by hacking the party's Twitter accounts. What Mutsvangwa did not reveal were the number of salient facts about his ZANU PF. ZANU PF, like the sinking pro-independence Titanic, is being abandoned by the remaining handful of members. Let us begin with a very simple logic in the state of affairs in ZANU PF and CCC. ZANU PF uses violence and coercion to force people to attend its rallies. They close schools and businesses, they bus people, they stop people from leaving their rallies. CCC, on the other hand, is a voluntary organization where any Zimbabwean is free to join. CCC does not force people or bus people to attend its rallies. CCC is full of prodigal sons and daughters who have or are returning back home having abandoned the ZANU PF. CCC, by a very simple logic, resonates with the Zimbabweans. ZANU PF does not. ZANU PF is now just a shell organization without any membership. ZANU PF is now a shadow of its former self. One prominent Zimbabwean academic said ZANU PF is now being breastfed by the army. ZANU PF is a project of the army, without which ZANU PF would have died a natural death many years ago. Securocrats and the state are now politically breastfeeding the dying ZANU PF baby. It is precisely for this reason that ZANU PF will resort to violence or support from the army and police and ZEC if it has any hope of staying in power. According to ZANU PF Secretary for Administration some years ago, millions of membership cards were and still are gathering dust in some abandoned warehouse because no one is interested in buying ZANU PF cards or becoming a member of ZANU PF. More than 70% of the Zimbabwean population is under 40 years of age. In other words, more than 70% of the Zimbabwean population today was not yet born at independence in 1980. Also, more than 70% of the Zimbabwean population does not relate to ZANU PF's repeated boasts and slogans about having liberated Zimbabwe through the armed struggle. Again, more than 70% of the Zimbabwean population lives in impoverished state today. Again, more than 70% of the Zimbabwean population is asking ZANU PF this question. You keep telling us you liberated Zimbabwe through the armed struggle. But what have you done for us in the past 42 years? What are you doing about corruption? It is not a surprise that ZANU PF today cannot answer this question to the satisfaction of the impoverished masses. If ZANU PF cannot tell more than 70% of the impoverished population what they have done for Zimbabwe since independence, how does ZANU PF expect more than 70% of the Zimbabweans to vote for it? ZANU PF knows too well that more than 70% of the population of Zimbabwe will never vote for ZANU PF. Therefore, ZANU PF engages in manipulating the electoral process to its favor. As a matter of fact, the late Robert Mugabe once revealed that in the 2008 elections, MDCT under Tsvangirai won 70% of the votes to ZANU PF's less than 30%. A party official later corrected that, but the cat was already out of the bag. The recent revelations by CCC of the manipulation by the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission of the voters' roll show two significant developments. One is that ZAC is manipulating the voters' roll with impunity in order to favor ZANU PF in urban and rural areas, especially in urban areas where the ruling party has been massively rejected. The second is that CCC is now more vigilant than ever in monitoring the voter registration data. CCC has a three-part strategy for the general elections in 2023. This strategy includes encouraging citizens to register to vote, encouraging citizens to actually vote, and encouraging citizens to closely monitor ZAC's performance. In a democratic society and during the campaign period, different political parties are given an equal opportunity to canvass voters about their policies or strategies to improve the lives of the population. People must hear what each political party offers them so they can make informed choices on whom to vote for. The role of the state in election campaigns and voting is equal to that of an umpire or a referee in a sports game. The state is expected to ensure, without favor, for a democratic environment and level playing field for all the contesting parties. These are three important components of the electoral system in a democratic state. There are three important components of the electoral system in a democratic state. The first is a fair and transparent system of voter registration and campaigning. The second is managing the electoral system fairly, especially the voting process and counting and publishing the results. The third is the peaceful transfer of power where the opposition will have won. The state must protect the interests of all candidates without fear or favor. In this case, the electoral body, as in the Zimbabwe Election Commission, must be made up of civil servants who have the civic responsibility to make sure voter registration, voting, and the counting of ballots and publishing the results are fair and transparently done. ZAC must not act as a department of ZANU PF. It is a civic organization answerable only to the nation of Zimbabwe. The police and other security agencies have a responsibility to respond to conflicts to ensure there is peace among all contesting candidates and their supporters. The police and security agents are paid from taxpayers' money. They are employed by the nation, not by political parties, and their allegiance is to the nation and to the people of Zimbabwe, not to any political party. In the case of Zimbabwe, police and security agencies must not take orders from ZANU PF, something that they have been doing for many, many years. They must take orders from the people of Zimbabwe. Their duties and responsibilities are clearly spelled out in the Zimbabwe Constitution, not the ZANU PF Constitution. The responsibilities of the state, voter election supervisors, and security agencies are also spelled out in the SADC guidelines for conducting free and fair elections. Mnangagwa and ZANU PF have chosen to ignore the guidelines and the rules for conducting elections. They are instead following a policy of ZANU PF which was established before independence. This policy was spelled out by the late Labour Minister in Mugabe's government, Kumbirai Kangai. Kangai, who died in 2013, stated that the only free and fair elections ZANU PF would allow were the very first elections that brought in black-ruled Zimbabwe in 1980. Under what he called ZANU PF policy of democratic centrism, Kangai said once ZANU PF had won the first elections in 1980, the space for free and fair elections would be closed indefinitely for Zimbabwe. He said ZANU PF would not allow the ballot to replace the bullet that brought independence to Zimbabwe. Kangai said Zimbabwe was won through the armed struggle led by the ZANLA freedom fighters. He conveniently forgot to mention that Joshua Ngomo's Zipra freedom fighters were also involved. Kangai's point was repeatedly echoed by the late Robert Mugabe. So, why hold elections if they will not be allowed to be free and fair? Kangai alluded to what a former Soviet leader Stalin was reported to have said. He said it is enough that people know where there was an election. The people who cast the votes decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. That's what Stalin is reported to have said. This is the policy ZANU PF uses to this day for determining the election results. ZANU PF has now perfected a system for rigging elections, and it involves several strategies. Many of them are now in play. One prominent strategy is to unleash the police, army, security agencies, and ZANU PF thugs against the main opposition party, especially the Citizens Coalition for Change led by Advocate Nelson Chamisa. In the past, the MDC alliance led by Chamisa was viewed and treated as an enemy of Zimbabwe and subjected to untold acts of harassment and arrest. Now that the MDC alliance has been illegally given to Douglas Monzora, it is no longer viewed as an enemy. What is viewed as an enemy now is the CCC led by Chamisa. Police, army, and security agencies are now under strict orders to harass, arrest, jail members of CCC. In just 2 weeks, many incidences of police harassment against CCC have been reported. CCC members are constantly harassed for wearing the yellow regalia to celebrate their party's color. Last year, one of the vice presidents of CCC, Tendai Biti, was picked up by the police after they found him speaking to a group of people in his constituency where he was campaigning to be elected a member of parliament. The police did not tell him why they were arresting him. They said they wanted him to accompany them to the police station. They denied they were arresting them. The situation got even more bizarre at the police station after Biti's lawyers wanted to know the charges against Biti. The police appeared confused and unable to give any answer. They transferred him to another police station where a visibly confused police chief ended up mumbling some apologies. The best answer he could give was that the police were not sure what Biti was doing at a supermarket. They said Biti should inform the police when he goes out to meet the people. Isn't that strange? Isn't that ridiculous? Biti later said the CCC was now used to harassment and arrest, but was determined to fight on under this undemocratic environment. He pointed out the arrests of journalists and CCC politicians, and including Job Sikala, who is still being held in jail. And It said, notwithstanding all efforts by the ZANU PF regime to undermine the opposition party, CCC will continue its campaigns because it represents the spirit of Zimbabweans. He also said ZEC was complicit in the strategy to subvert free and fair elections in Zimbabwe. It has been discovered that 175,000 voters lists have been transferred from constituencies where elections were not being held to constituencies where by-elections were being held in order to boost the voters for ZANU PF candidates. And this is likely to be repeated in the 2023 elections. A leaked audio showed ZANU PF operatives discussing holding a ZANU PF rally on the same day of and next to the CCC Star rally in Highfields. That was last year. The leaked video showed exasperated voices agonizing over how to sabotage CCC. What was very clearly emerging was that Mnangagwa and ZANU PF are up against the wall in the aftermath of CCC, which has taken off the whole country by storm. Despite all efforts not to broadcast CCC on taxpayers-funded state media, word has spread out to more Zimbabweans than ZBC can reach. The effectiveness of the CCC in mobilizing public support has been shown by the admission by ZANU PF spokesperson Chris Mutsvangwa that CCC has now effectively infiltrated ZANU PF. He said the infiltrators were now passing ZANU PF strategies to CCC. And Zimbabweans are now used to ZANU PF harassing, arresting, torturing opposition parties. This has subsequently generated even more public sympathy for CCC. Zimbabweans are now all too familiar that Mnangagwa and ZANU PF do not play fair, that they use violence on peaceful and innocent opposition supporters. While ZANU PF has labeled CCC as the mark of the beast CC 666, in the minds and thinking of Zimbabweans, the devil is very well represented by ZANU PF and their militia thugs. They know this because the masses are constantly being intimidated into supporting ZANU PF. So who is the devil here? CCC with its peaceful campaigns, or ZANU PF with its intimidating and violent campaigns? The answer is obvious. One rally that featured Mnangagwa as keynote speaker was held in Epworth, and it proved to the Zimbabweans beyond reasonable doubt that ZANU PF is a political bully. ZANU PF knew that the party has no support in urban areas. If people had been given a free choice, they would not have attended that rally. So ZANU PF bussed people from as far as Bulawayo. ZANU PF also promised that Mnangagwa would be giving free land title deeds at the rally. ZANU PF also closed shops and schools to force people to attend the rally. To make sure people complied, ZANU PF militia thugs said anybody who did not attend the rally would suffer the consequences, which were obviously unpleasant. But Mnangagwa changed his mind once the rally was on. He simply said he could not give the title deeds because it required a lot of planning. This infuriated many people who decided to leave before the rally ended. But alas, ZANU PF had mobilized police to stop people from leaving this Mnangagwa rally. In the face of overwhelming masses who now openly oppose ZANU PF, Mutsvanga's admission that Triple C is infiltrating ZANU PF is half the story. There's a lot more to it. The full story is people have abandoned ZANU PF. ZANU PF, like the Titanic, is sinking. But unlike the Titanic, ZANU PF will cling to power at all costs, even when they lose the elections.
This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe. Thank you for listening. This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe. Thank you for listening. This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in-depth analysis of the situation in Zimbabwe. Thank you for listening. This concludes today's broadcast of Letter from America, a weekly in